Почитувани, добре дојдовте во летно издание на интервју на OhridNews. Мој гостин денеска, амбасадорот на Европската Унија во Македонија, господинот Дејвид Гир. Добре дојдовте во студиото на OhridNews.
Thank you, it's a real pleasure to be here.
Повод за вашата посета беше концертот на Охридско лето на 26 јули, односно вечерта на Европската Унија, која станува традиционален дел од Охридско лето. Како оценувате воопшто соработката со фестивалот, како ќе продолжи во иднина?
We have an excellent cooperation with the Ohrid Summer Festival. We've been supporting it for many years and delighted to do so. It's really just one example of the many ways in which the European Union is supporting cultural activities across the country, here in Ohrid, but elsewhere as well.
Охридско лето е заштитен знак на Охрид, а заштитен знак се и културното и природното наследство, заштитени од УНЕСКО. Во тој контекст, како ги оценувате заложбите на актуелната локална власта и на државата за зачувување на статусот на Охрид во УНЕСКО? Правиме ли доволно?
Ohrid benefits from a remarkable combination of enormous natural beauty together with the culture and tradition of Ohrid city itself. And so the objective in the UNESCO status is to make sure that these remarkable sites are preserved for future generations, for our children, so that in 50, 100 years' time, people can still come here and enjoy the beautiful lake and also learn about the rich culture here. So of course it needs preserving. And the way to go about such a complex operation, which isn't just limited to Ohrid town, but to the entire lake, it means a cooperation between everyone, between government, between local government, between business, civil society, experts, as well as international partners such as the European Union, which is also helping with this. There is a long way to go. There are many challenges in ensuring that the lake and the city and the entirety of the property, including in the Albanian side, is preserved for posterity. Much needs to be done, but we really want to see this moving forward so that the whole site is preserved for everyone to enjoy in the future.
Сепак ова лето ќе биде пред се политички жешко и тешко, затоа што пред Македонија се многу предизвици, земјата мораше да направи сериозни отстапки, би рекол тешки, за да го отпочне, да го отвори процесот за пристапување кон Европската Унија, но тој ќе биде исклучително тежок и оптоварен со барањата на соседот Бугарија. Сето тоа ја жешти и онака комплицираната политичка ситуација во земјата и предизвика големи реакции. Што очекувате да се случи на тој план? Дали е можно продлабочување на политичката криза во земјата?
So let's have a look at what has actually happened and what's been delivered. The agreement, originally the French proposal, now an agreement, has produced, first of all, the opening of negotiations with North Macedonia, which started last week in Brussels, and the starting of the various processes on negotiations, so the screening process. The agreement ensures that the Macedonian language is respected without reservation, very important in the key text, the negotiating framework, and it ensures also that identity issues do not get caught up into the negotiations themselves. On the other hand, it also respects certain requirements from Bulgaria, which are part of an agreement between North Macedonia and Bulgaria. So it has delivered on this strategic objective of starting the process and moving forward towards the goal that the country has, which is to join the European Union.
Македонската опозиција има спротивни ставови од власта по ова прашање, има можност, односно најава за референдум, а исто така се бараат и предвремени избори. Како е огледана сето ова?
All of these questions, referenda or other issues, are a matter for the country. It's a sovereign choice how they want to move forward. But let's look at what's really in play here. Because what we're talking here is about North Macedonia's strategic goal to join the European Union. Why is that important? Well, it offers prospects which really are not available elsewhere. First of all, in terms of prosperity. It is an opening entrance into the world's largest single market, 450 million people, which we've seen time and time again, brings improvements in livelihoods, investment, jobs, ensuring that young people, our children, your children here, have the skills to be able to compete in the 21st century. It also brings security. We live in an increasingly insecure world with enormous challenges. Let's take climate change or the competition that we see globally. All of these are, as I say, very significant challenges. Much better to be within a European Union of 27 member states, 28 with North Macedonia, which would help to ensure the resilience. And of course, it's also a union of democratic values, which would help to strengthen this country as a member of that union, its democratic values, its rule of law, and its efforts to ensure a democratic future for the country. So that's what's really there. And the question is, the negotiations have now been launched. The countdown to joining has begun. It's certainly an extensive path which requires reforms. Does the country continue on that path now that it's opened, or does the country decide, okay, we have an alternative path? Not quite sure what that would be, but I think the options here are very clear. And the good news, as I've said, is that last week we were able to overcome the obstacles that we've had in order to be able to open negotiations. And I can promise you, even a few months ago, I would have not been sure that I could have been able to say these words today.
Господине Гир, дали отворањето на Уставот и наметнувањето на одредени историски прашања во евроинтеграцијскиот процес може да го загрозат идентитетот на македонскиот народ и држава?
It was interesting, last week I was actually at the Intergovernmental Conference which launched the negotiations for North Macedonia, and during that one of the leaders who intervened was the High Representative, the Vice President Borel, and he raised this question of identity, and he said, you don't lose your identity on the way to the European Union. It doesn't happen like that. He then recognized that this country has an important identity. It has a rich culture, a rich history. All of these elements will come into the European Union and be part of that broader diversity. I mean, do the Spanish become less Spanish because they join the European Union? Of course not. The Estonians less Estonian? Of course not. And so his point that he was making was that the identity of the country is enhanced by being within the European Union and not outside. Now, this question also came up when we had the visits of President Michel of the European Council and President von der Leyen from the European Commission when they came to Skopje quite recently. In fact, President Michel was here in Ohrid. And what they said was that identity issues should not be part of the benchmarks or the conditions for the process itself. And President von der Leyen went even further when she was speaking in Skopje in Parliament, when she gave as an example the interpretations of history. So I think the good news is that the path is now open, the countdown has begun, and I think that the country can go into the process now confident in its own identity, confident in its overall future in the European Union, but what it needs to deliver on is the most important thing, which is actually reform.
На патот кон Европската Унија, Македонија ќе мора да спроведе сериозни реформи, да решава прашања кои се од суштинско значење за граѓаните. Тие очекуваат поголема заштита на животната средина, поефикасни институции, борба против корупцијата, право и правна држава. Како гледате на се това, на сите овие предизвици на земјата и пред се, има ли одреден напредок во Македонија по овие прашања?
Every year, you're probably aware, the European Commission for many years now has been carrying out a review of progress in reform and European Union related reforms. And that progress report, which is usually published in the autumn, gives a good sense of where the country stands in many different sectors. Progress has been made in many sectors: rule of law, the fight against corruption, environment, business sector, etc., building up skills for employment, education. But of course, there is still a long way to go. And while we can point to, for example, in the rule of law, important developments in the judiciary and in the prosecutors, we also know that there's much more that needs to happen. And that's why the negotiation process now is so important, because this will allow us together with the country to identify where the gaps are, where the benchmarks need to be set, and then how those can be met in order that the country is able to take on all the responsibilities of membership.
COVID-кризата се уште не е завршена, таа е во сенка, ако може така да се каже, на друга голема криза, тоа е секако војната криза во Украина, но на Европа и на Балканот им се закланува уште една криза, а тоа е енергетската криза. Каква есен, каква зима ги очекува граѓаните во Европа и на Балканот, и дали во случај на продлабочување на енергетската криза може и што може да очекува Македонија од ЕУ?
We've been living through a number of very difficult years. We've had the COVID crisis and the emergence from the COVID crisis. During that time, the European Union stood by North Macedonia and the Western Balkans, providing really practical support, financial support, vaccines, medicines, and equipment. Now we have Russia's unjustified and unprovoked war on Ukraine, which is having significant consequences on many countries, hitting on the price and the supply of energy, touching on food supplies because of the blockade created by Russia. We hope very much that the recent agreement negotiated will help with the release of grain, but we still have to see that operating. So these have all created great challenges, and we see in the European Union that member states are very much having to deal with these crises, having to deal with deal with inflation, increasing energy costs. The way to do that, the discussion that's taking place in Brussels, is about doing it to the maximum possible together. And that together also includes the Western Balkans. For example, there have already been extensive discussions concerning the creation of a common energy platform, which North Macedonia would join in order to help ensure access of supplies of gas, hydrogen, and other fuels. In addition, the European Union is continuing to invest in the country, provide support for infrastructure, which is going to be increasingly important. Take, for example, in the energy sector, where we're helping support photovoltaic systems, for example, in Oslo. We're helping with energy efficiency in a number of cities across the country. We're helping build up the electricity grid in order to ensure supply of electricity. So there is a long-term practical commitment from the European Union. We see North Macedonia as part of the family, and we see that the best way to approach the kind of challenges that we have today is collectively, together with the European Union and also with our partners in the Western Balkans.
Господине Гир, ви благодарам што издвоивте време и што бевте гостин во интервју на OhridNews и ви посакувам пријатен престој во нашиот град. А вам, почитувани, ви благодарам на вниманието. Останете и натаму информирани, следете не на нашиот онлайн портал ohridnews.com и на дигиталните платформи на социјалните мрежи. Пријатно!